Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. Of course, we had Alex call in and talk about this massive speech that Donald Trump did earlier today. We're going to have another couple of excerpts coming up here. We're going to take your calls as well. The last caller who called in was talking about how important it is for Donald Trump to get out his message with commercials. And I agree. But as I was saying, I think a lot of this narrative that we're seeing from the mainstream media has two parts to it. Number one, they're looking for anything that they can criticize Donald Trump on. They say, well, he hasn't raised money, therefore he's not a serious candidate. Seriously? Seriously? Look at the difference in the number of votes that Donald Trump has gotten versus any other Republican candidate. He's been able to bring people into the process that never voted before. He set a record number of votes. Millions more people voted in the Republican primaries than ever before for any Republican candidate. That's serious. That's a serious candidate. And he did it with the least amount of money. Remember, we were all supposed to be in shock and awe of Jeb Bush's $150 million, his war chest that he put together with Wall Street and foreign governments. And Donald Trump wiped the map with that $150 million shill, Jeb Bush. And I think he can do it with Hillary Clinton as well. But I think it's also very self-serving of the media, because the mainstream media is very upset about this. This is a huge, huge source of income for these people. Now, you know, if you remember back to the 2000 elections, George W. Bush was criticized for buying the election. He spent $200 million to get elected. That's nothing today. You got Obama raising this up to $1 billion. I mean, Hillary will easily spend over $1 billion now. And that is a measure not of what a serious candidate is. That is not a measure of the number of people behind them. That is a measure of the corruption of Washington, because it's only a few people who are giving that money, only a few people who can give that kind of money. It is a measure of how out of control and unaccountable the crony capitalism has become in Washington, D.C. So it is no badge of honor to raise tens or hundreds of millions of dollars from Wall Street and foreign governments. And that's what Donald Trump was talking about today. He called her out on that. He called her out on other crimes. And here's one of the, he's talked about crooked Hillary. He's talked about her being a world-class liar today. And here he is talking about corrupt Hillary from today's press conference.
Hillary Clinton gave China millions of jobs, and our best jobs, and effectively let China completely rebuild itself. In return, Hillary Clinton got rich. The book Clinton Cash by Peter Schweitzer documents how Bill and Hillary used the State Department to enrich their family and America's and at America's expense. She gets rich, making you poor.
That's right.
Here is a quote from the book. At the center of U.S. policy toward China was Hillary Clinton. At this critical time for U.S.-China relations, Bill Clinton gave her a number of speeches that were underwritten by the Chinese government and its supporters. These funds were paid to the Clintons' bank account directly, while Hillary was negotiating with China on behalf of the United States. Tell me, folks, does that work? She sold out our workers and our country for Beijing. Hillary Clinton has also been the biggest promoter of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which will ship millions more of our jobs overseas and give up congressional power to an international foreign commission. Now, because I have pointed out why it would be such a disastrous deal, she's pretending that she's against it. She's given and deleted, as you know, and most people have heard about this. Have we ever heard about her deleting anything? No, I don't think so. She deleted the entire record from her book, and deletion is something she really does know something about, because she's deleted at least 30,000 emails, which, by the way, should be able to be found.
Yeah, he's absolutely right about that. She says, she was supported of Trans-Pacific Partnership, the transatlantic partnerships. Now she says she's against it. Look, Hillary Clinton's State Department pushed for the Keystone Pipeline harder than anybody in the Democrat Party did. Most of those in the Democrat Party didn't like it. They were worried about the environmental aspects of it. The Republican Party was supporting it because they wanted to get behind the oil industry. And it's a massive crony capitalism issue. It's a massive eminent domain issue, just like this railroad system that's going to be running from Dallas to Houston is, giving a foreign corporation the right to come in and take your property. And that's why on so many of these issues, we see a net wash. You know, we talked about how Donald Trump had used eminent domain, and yet all of the Republican candidates want to give eminent domain to a foreign corporation. But what's important, where the real difference is that he understands that the Trans-Pacific Partnership is going to destroy our sovereignty, and it is going to destroy our prosperity. And we know that she's for this. We know that the Castro brothers, one of them that's being touted as one of the front runners for her VP choices, his brother is touring Vietnam with Obama a week or two ago and pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership. There's absolutely no doubt that Hillary is going to push this through, these globalist trade partnerships. There's absolutely no doubt that she's going to push that through, and he was absolutely right to oppose her on it. It is a key difference. This election, again, is about globalism versus nationalism. And whether or not you agree with Donald Trump on the individual liberty issues, there isn't a difference between him and the Democrats or anybody else that's running on the Republican side. The issue and the only choice that we have here is on the issue of globalism versus nationalism, on these trade treaties, on these open borders issues. And that's where the Republican establishment and the Democrat establishment are joined at the hip, and that is the difference with Donald Trump. That is the key issue. Let's talk to Rich in New Jersey. Rich, your comments.
Hey, David, how you doing? I just had a question for you. I want to see if this is a viable thing. I know in the 40s, UBC Bank, which was the Prescott Bush and Herbert Walker were investing money for a guy named Thyssen, and they broke that bank up under the Doing Business with the Enemy Act. Now, if Saudi Arabia, since the war on terrorism is a war, if they're convicted or seen to be the ones jockeying 9/11, wouldn't it be possible to seize Hillary Clinton's finances and all her money based on the same principle?
If we were a just country, yes, of course it would be. The question is Hillary even going to be indicted by our government? That's a true issue. I mean, you're talking about breaking banks up. We've seen UBC and HSBC convicted repeatedly for money laundering of drug cartels and terrorists. They even gave the Sinaloa cartel. You know, everybody talked about El Chapo escaping and everything. Well, HSBC gave him his own personal window where they laundered money for him. What did they get? They got a slap on the wrist. Nothing happened to them. And it was the Obama administration said, hey, they're too big to jail. Remember Eric Holder saying that essentially? That was the summary of what he had to say, and it's absolutely true. That was their attitude. It doesn't do any good for us to lock up any of these bankers, and we don't want to revoke their charter. They wouldn't do anything to the people that were rigging the LIBOR exchange, the London interbank rates that everybody's home mortgage rates, especially if you got a variable rate mortgage. It's all based on the LIBOR exchange. These people were making billions rigging this market. So we've got all these bankers who are caught in all this criminal operation, and they keep getting away with it. So I think the most that we're going to be able to hope for out of this is an indictment of Hillary Clinton. I don't think we're going to get a conviction, and I don't think an indictment is going to make any difference to the people who support her. As the earlier caller said, he said, I talked to people about Hillary Clinton, and they don't really care. They don't really care that she violated the religion of the police state, national security. I mean, this is a person who committed sacrilege. It's like, you know, slaughtering a child on the altar or something, what she did with the emails. And yet she's going to get a pass. And they have to do, they're taking all of our freedoms for this national security state, and yet they're going to give Hillary Clinton a pass. So I don't really think they're going to do anything about it. Do you?
No, when you put it that way, unfortunately, I think you're right. It just seems we've fallen so far. But that would be it would be, if this was the country that it's supposed to be, we would be able to do that, because if you have the Saudis bragging how much money they gave her, you know, I mean, it's clearly out in the open too. It's just amazing. It's just amazing.
Well, you know, I honestly think that this is going to be a key election because there's a lot in it. Hillary Clinton is the kind of person who is going to take reprisals against Donald Trump. You can bet on it. And he's not afraid to personally attack her, as we saw today. We knew this was going to happen. We knew that Donald Trump was not going to pull any punches like these other politicians did. And he has called these people on their globalist schemes, and he has exposed it. I mean, he's talked about the issues with vaccines and autism. He's talked about a lot of these different issues that other people wouldn't talk about. He talked about the 28 pages. We had people who were on the official conspiracy theory group, you know, the 9/11 Commission. They talked about Saudi Arabia's connection in the original report that they put together. And yet you had these, it got redacted, and you got these people who were head of the Senate Intelligence Committee who for 15 years are trying to get this exposed. They couldn't get any traction on it at all until Donald Trump brought it up. So he's going to come out, and he's going to come out and not hold back on any of this stuff. And so I think it's very clear that if Donald Trump wins the election, there will probably be a criminal prosecution of Hillary Clinton or some of these other people. I think he will do something like that. And so for her, her back is against the wall. You know, it's the White House or the big house. For him, his back is also against the wall. He's in this now. He's in this. And the establishment is going to come after him with all their barrels loaded if he doesn't win. So this is really a do or die. You know, they say, you know, if you come after the king, you better get him because you don't get a second chance. So this is, you know, they both got a lot on the line here in this thing. So it's going to be a very, very difficult, very important election. I want to go to Matt in Oklahoma, but before we do, I just want to remind you again that we've extended the Tim Kennedy special. This is the last day. We've extended it one more day. That's 15% off of the products that Tim Kennedy tells us he found most effective in his training for UFC as well as Special Forces. He trains intensively, and he said, when I use Super Male Vitality, Brain Force, Secret 12, I can really, really feel a difference. He mentioned that to Alex Jones. And so Alex put together a special. So, all right, we'll put those three out there. We'll offer them people, give them an opportunity to try these products at 15% off, see if they do for them what they did for Tim Kennedy. And, of course, you can read hundreds of five-star reviews at InfoWarsLife.com, people talking about the effect that these products have had, positive effect on them and their life. And we're offering that to you. We extended that for one more day. Super Male Vitality, Brain Force, Secret 12, 15% off. That's the Tim Kennedy special at InfoWarsLife.com. Now let's go back to Matt in Oklahoma. Matt, you wanted to make a comment about Trump's speech today. Go ahead.
I did. Hey, Dave, longtime listener, daily watcher. I've also been like you, of kind of, was on the fence about Trump. You know, at the first of the year, if I came forward and said, hey, you're going to like Trump at the end of the year, there's no way I would have believed that. I'm sure you probably felt the same way.
That's right.
But let me get to the points here. Okay, so like you said, it's globalism versus nationalism, which at its core is the individual under attack versus the collective.
Yes.
And what caused that was, like you said, NAFTA. NAFTA was the coffin. The TPP will be the lid they want to nail down on top of America. Now, we want to blame the corporations because they're the ones that, buy out all the politicians. They buy the left and the right and rig the game before the plays are made on the field, and they already know the outcome. But then the people in the stands can say, that guy on the other side, I hate him because he likes this guy. Well, I like that guy. Now they're arguing about the game, and they don't understand who fixed the game before the election. But it goes higher than that, because at the top of this pyramid is the Federal Reserve. We used to be a free nation. In 1913, we were taken over by foreign bankers, and since then we've not been free. And in fact, to call the left and the right parties is actually incorrect. It should be the Democratic Corporation and the Republic Corporation.
Yes.
But what gets us in this direction is, I was trying to explain this to my brother last night, and he doesn't understand a lot of these things. And he actually came up with a great analogy I wanted to share. Was, the concept of trade is, you used to have a gold coin, you'd go get an IOU note from the bank, and you could go get that gold coin back by giving them the paper back. But what happens if they took that, currency, that piece of paper, and then made a photocopy of it? Then they took the photocopy and put that on top of the photocopy machine and made another copy, and kept taking the copy of the copy and copying it over and over and over, and now you have an explanation for the value of our currency.
That'd be called quantitative easing, wouldn't it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. And, one of the things people need to understand, too, when we talk about this and we talk about the economic consequences, I think a lot of people don't realize that it was a package deal. When they created the Federal Reserve and they gave them control, they also created the income tax. And they created the income tax at the same time they started opening up and lowering tariffs, opening up our trade, calling it free trade. Okay, so before that, if we go all the way back to Thomas Jefferson, we had a situation where Thomas Jefferson bragged at the beginning of his second administration. He said, we have eliminated all internal taxation. He says, what person in America, what farmer, laborer, mechanic knows a tax man? None of them know a tax man. We support the government, and it was a small government. It was a constitutional-sized government. We support the government strictly based on tariffs, on money coming into the country. And what did that do for us? Okay, that gave us a strong, internal, self-sufficient government. And what they did when they did exactly the opposite thing when they put together the income tax, created the Federal Reserve, this all scheme of the bankers, and then opened up trade for us. They took down the trade barriers, they took down the tariffs, but then they put internal taxes on us. And we're at the extent right now where, as Donald Trump was pointing out, and he was being mocked in the debates by Marco Rubio, who wouldn't let him finish the sentence, Donald Trump kept saying, hey, they've got all these lines that they've drawn. They don't let competition for insurance companies go from state to state. And Marco Rubio goes, lines, he's talking about lines. He was talking about the fact that we don't even have free trade in health insurance in America. That's how they have locked us down. That's what the crony capitalists, the banking companies, the insurance companies have done. They have destroyed free trade within our country. And yet they have opened it up. Why have they opened it up? Because they want to export jobs. They want to import workers. And so we need to understand that having tariffs is not the end of the world. You know, we always we hear this narrative that, you know, what created the Great Depression was tariffs at the borders. That's not true. And we even see the fear-mongering coming from George Soros saying, hey, you know, once before I got a hold of your currency and I dropped the pound 20% in a day. And I looked at that and I thought, well, you know, that's not really a bad thing, is it? Because one of the key advantages of China is their currency manipulation. And what do? They try to manipulate it to make their currency have an advantage trading with other people. And so if that were to happen, Britain would have an advantage. As a matter of fact, Japan's Abe is doing the same thing. They call it Abenomics. And he's trying to do the same sort of thing, which George Soros said he would do to the UK if they get out as a punishment. I would say, hey, bring it on. That's only going to make exports more affordable coming out of Britain, as well as building an independence and an economy within their country. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more of your calls.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com with an extremely important message. You're probably asking yourself right now, what's the most important phrase in America right now? Well, it happens to be Hillary for Prison. Get your Hillary for Prison t-shirt today at the Infowars store for $9.95. That's half of what it used to be at $19.95. Why do you want to get this? Why should you buy this for you and your friends and family? Because number one, it's a great conversation starter. And number two, hell, you get to trigger a whole lot of crazy liberal commie bastards. And that's what I like to do. And maybe you're just at work right now and it's Casual Shirt Friday and one of your hipster buddies walks in with a Hillary Clinton shirt saying I'm with her. Negative. This is what you're going to do. You're going to stand up and go, ah, Hillary for prison! Benghazi!
What difference at this point does it make?
Go to InfoWarsStore.com and get your Hillary for Prison shirt today for $9.95 and trigger more assholes like him.